Click below to watch the original Sins video. One obligatory sin for the comically oversized timer.
You want to know the secret to surviving air travel? You walk around on the rug barefoot and make fists with your toes.
Because apparently, the act of John taking off his shoes later in the movie required setup for some reason.
Kids take a trip back to the 80s when handguns were allowed on planes, smoking was allowed in airports, pregnant women were advised to drink by their female bosses.
Can handle a little sip? That baby's ready to tend bar.
14-year-old teenagers were allowed to work as limo drivers, and gas was f***ing 74 cents a gallon.
This video came out in 2013. You might see nothing yet, boy.
On behalf of the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Ozu, and the Board of Directors, we thank you one and all and wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year!
And thus, the decision to set this movie at Christmas time gave birth to one of the most pointless, longest-running debates in the history of ever.
Because I am interested in the $640 million in negotiable bearer bonds.
Holy Nakatomi has $640 million in bearer bonds? After the Fiscal Responsibility Act was passed in 1982? After this revelation, I'm not sure John McClane is killing the right people in this movie. I mean, sure, Hans Gruber and his crew are a bunch of murderous thieves, but what kind of is Nakatomi involved with?
This just in. A corporation does something shady.
There are rules for policemen. Yeah, that's what my captain keeps telling me.
What was John expecting would happen here? Sure, there are rules for policemen, as good old Tony says, but if the bad guy refuses to drop his weapon, can't you just shoot his ass?
This sin can be debunked just by saying, this is John fucking McClane. That's just who he is. A cocky, arrogant bastard who doesn't always think things through in favor of acting like he's in a movie. That's what makes his dynamic with the cold, calculating Hans so engaging.
I realize movie terrorists are dummies, but this is literally the least effective way to go about hitting your target with bullets.
John is under the fucking table. What do you expect him to do?
Going in? Man, that's crazy. There could be over 30 hostages in there for all we know.
Instead of making a few simple phone calls that would clear up the situation, the LAPD, God bless them, decides to go with the kick-ass first and then figure out what's going on method.
AKA, cops act like cops. Also, how do you expect them to make any phone calls? The terrorists cut the phone lines, dumbass.
Excuse me, sir. But what about the body that fell out the window?
Well, who knows? It's probably some stockbroker got depressed.
Some stockbroker who got depressed who somehow ended up with a bunch of bullet holes all over his body before flopping backwards out of the building. Also, the chief knows that there is at the very least one crazed gunman in the building, but he still thinks that the dead body riddled with bullet holes is somehow unrelated to that. Brilliant detective work, everybody. Let's pack it up and go home.
Oh my god, the quarterback is toast!
God, I am so glad that Jeremy has since stopped using the sin because the nerd soundbite is so goddamn loud and annoying.
Geronimo, motherfucker!
Okay, I know I've defended a lot of John's rash actions in this movie by the virtue of that just being who he is, but this move was reckless even for him. He could have taken out the whole building.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
Is this how Ellis negotiates multi-million-dollar deals? How is Nakatomi not bankrupt?
Okay, so first off, there's nothing about this negotiating tactic that wouldn't be effective on somebody who's not Hans Gruber. Also, the reason why Nakatomi isn't bankrupt from this is probably due to the fact that this multi-million-dollar corporation probably has more than one dude doing all their negotiating.
Oh, God!
Roy, you alright?
Just trying to fire down a 1,000-year-old Twinkie.
Why would McClane bother to give the play-by-play of his Twinkie meal over the radio?
Again, because this is John McClane, and if John McClane gets the idea to do something funny, then he's gonna fucking do it.
This isn't the kind of Coke that Ellis likes.
That's actually a really funny background joke that I probably wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't pointed it out, and yet you sinned it for some reason.
Did John give Hans a gun with bullets in it? Of course he didn't. He's John McClane. So, now that he's got confirmation that this is Hans Gruber, why doesn't he blow him away right now?
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for providing the exact rebuttal that I needed for this sin.
He's John McClane.
Once again, John McClane is a cocky bastard. If he has the opportunity to screw with someone instead of killing them, then he's gonna fucking do it.
The circuits that cannot be cut are cut automatically in response to a terrorist incident.
Wait a minute, this whole plan relied on the FBI cutting the power? And they had no backup plan in case they didn't. And everyone who signed on to do this job with Hans was okay with that?
I'm guessing that they might not have been because it seems like Hans is the only one who knew about this aspect of the plan. He probably didn't tell anyone for the pretty reasonable fear that they would bail if they knew. Although, that raises the question of how the hell Hans knew the FBI was going to show up at all. Not even the police would have arrived if it wasn't for John. I know that Hans earlier said that the authorities getting involved was an inevitability, but not only did the terrorists not do anything to ensure that the FBI would get involved, but they actively made it harder for themselves by cutting the phone lines.
So, did someone get in the elevator, go to the 30th floor, and then explode when they got there?
Or maybe they went with the much more reasonable plan of just putting a bomb in the elevator.
So this ambulance was supposedly going to fit 13 terrorists and 640 million in bearer bonds, and they were what? Going to smash through the security gates after they blew up the roof? Remember, Theo destroyed the computer that controlled the security gates. They were either going to have to smash through them or wait for someone to cut through them, and they didn't think anyone would notice the ambulance that somehow got there before the gates were closed?
Remember that Hans ended up demanding a helicopter from the cops, and they very easily could have just used that to get the money out instead.
Also, department.
Maybe if the footage you were using had more than 3 pixels, then you would notice that the T is definitely there.
Yippee-ki-yay, mother...
Yeah, let's review the movie's most quotable line and have a laugh about it during this situation.
The act of sinning anything that comes out of Alan Rickman's mouth is definitely a sin.
This is their idea of Christmas. I gotta be there for New Year's.
And then they all lived happily ever after. Except they didn't, because John and Holly ended up getting divorced in the 4th movie. Actually, you know what? I don't have the heart to sin this movie for the problems of the sequels. But I still feel like someone needs to be sinned for this, so I'm just gonna give it to Jeremy instead. Why? Because this is my channel and I get to do what I want. Fuck you.
What? How did this asshole get out of those chains hanging by his neck from a pretty decent height? I would say Carl is Houdini, but Carl is clearly better than Houdini.
While all of the other text layers disappear, the 57 continues hanging about for some reason. So, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, then do all the YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe. I originally planned on doing this movie around Christmas time, but I didn't really feel like opening up the can of worms of whether or not this counted as a Christmas movie, so I just ended up doing with my backup plan of Home Alone instead. But, again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye!